Well, for the past 25 years, it has been one of the most heavily scrutinized and most influential annual publications. Maclean's is releasing its annual rankings of Canadian universities. Of course, I caught up with the special issues editor Kim Honey to find out which schools are on top and how the evaluation system has evolved over the past quarter century. The new rankings are out, Kim. Any surprises to start with?
Well, there were a few, but they were mainly due to a new addition for student satisfaction numbers. So, for example, Mount Allison, which has always come first in the primarily undergraduate category, dropped down. It's probably related to a bitter strike they had last year. Students were upset because the school did not refund some tuition. So you can see sort of blips like that. We have Carleton moving up a little bit. Again, student satisfaction. We have Trent doing well because our other indicator was citations, which measures impact of research. Trent did very well there. The top of the top are the same old. McGill #1 for the 11th year in a row. UBC, Toronto chasing it. Toronto came #1 in our reputational survey. So that's when we talk to academics and guidance counselors and business people.
And what about two other big ones here, of course, Ryerson and York? How are they
Ryerson
shaping?
and York fared about the same as last year. They were 7. Well, they were really 7 and 8, but there was a tie at 7, so 7 and 9. And Ryerson comes out higher in our reputational survey. York, they're at 12 of all the schools of 49 we survey, and York is at 19. But they are both solidly in the middle of that category, their categories, and they've done well. York came in first. We did for the first time some program rankings, and York was in the top 3 for business schools.
Okay. Is that a surprise? Or, I mean, it's always had a reputation, I think, with the business.
It has a great reputation, but this is the first time we've done a programs ranking, so it was just interesting to see where those fall. Now, those are not part of this book, University Rankings. It's a new programs ranking guide.
Okay. Now, one of the things you talked about, reputation. How important is that? I mean, there's the number, McGill was #1 and UBC and then U of T, but U of T was #1 with reputation. How important is that?
Reputation is huge. It's immeasurable. We try to measure it by asking people, but it tends to stay the same for many, many years, which is why you see McGill, same place all those years. Toronto, McGill, those big research schools, UBC, Alberta, they tend to have these reputations because they're attracting internationally researchers who come to do great work that gets mentioned in these papers that we measure, and they make scientific discoveries. So they have a solid reputation that way. This year we tried to balance things with the student satisfaction. The big schools tend not to do well on that because they're in big cities, they're commuter campuses, they don't have that sort of dawn at the end of the hall holding your hand.
That is a big thing, but they do earn this reputation, not resting on their laurels at all. These are schools that continue to
Well, if you ask some schools in the middle of the pack, like the new ones like Ryerson and Concordia, those ones that are sort of have everything to gain by moving up, they would say that those reputations linger way too long. They'd say that they'll last 50 years, they would tell you that, hundreds of years. So it's a tough thing to crack because these schools are doing great work. Ryerson's got PhD programs, it's got lots of masters, it's doing all this great stuff in innovation, but it still tends to sit there and watch McGill, Toronto, UBC come in top of the top.
What would it, I mean, I guess it's hard to say, but is there something that can unseat them or anything that the University of Tennessee could help them move up? Was there one that did a surprise and jumped up 20 or 30 or something?
No, the rankings tend to be fairly stable because if they were moving around a lot, it would show you that they're not really methodologically sound. So we have introduced 2 new. We did think that did move a few people around, student satisfaction and citations, but the citations benefited the big schools, again, because of research. Student satisfaction benefited the smaller ones, and that was our aim, was to be balanced. We try by the categories to keep people together, so the big schools together, but I think that in the future, yes, we have plans to add all kinds of things like safety on campus, ethical investing. These are things students care about. Access for disabled students and services and mental health is huge.
This year you added student satisfaction. Were there any surprises in that? Were any schools standing out?
Well, Mount Allison in Sackville, New Brunswick was obviously the top and has been for years. If you look at our 1991 guide, it was the top of the Atlantic provinces. It fell down a bit in student satisfaction. Western University in London came on strong in that. Students really loved going there. It was a combination of many things. We asked them lots of questions, but we used that indicator was an amalgam of how do they like their professors, what's the response been to sexual assault on campus, what about red tape and bureaucracy. So these things were all rolled together. So I think that you see a difference with the bigger schools. They'll tend to be a little lower, but not Western in this case.
And but on the bigger schools, they also offer the ability to be in major cities, most of them, right?
Yes.
And that's always a plus in many ways, but it can be a daunting task.
That's right. Yeah, it attracts the student because they love Montreal, they love Toronto, they love Vancouver, but the housing is horrible. You know, we have a story about micro residences at UBC. They're micro residences. They are exactly 147 square feet. That's what it's come down to. And they're going to go for $700 or $800 a month, but that's what a student can afford. So those things all factor in.
And they're students. They're used to living in small spaces.
Yeah, they're supposed to live like that.
You got to suck it up for just some stuff for a little while.
Yeah.
And this, what has changed in the 25 years of this?
This is a really interesting thing. When I look at the 1991 issue, the issues, it's like an eerie deja vu. It was a bad time recession-wise. Students were worried about jobs. The universities were complaining that they didn't have enough money from government. They wanted to actually increase tuition to cover 25% of their operating costs from 17. But today we're at about 50, so that's actually moved up. But U of T had 32,000 students in 1991. It has 80,000 today. The tuition has quadrupled. It was 1,400 or so back then. It's now about 7,200. So you see that the growth has been massive. As the move to educate workers for this knowledge economy happened, you know, the great opening of universities to the middle class and to lower class kids, and also kids, you know, just more and more went. You see that in the sheer numbers that are going. The issues, somewhat the same.
And you can pick up a copy of the Maclean's 2016 University Rankings on newsstands tomorrow morning, or you can read it tonight on the Texture My Next Issue app.